After studying this module, you shall be able to define intelligence, understand how intelligence tests are constructed, understand the standard of intelligence testing, understand the impact of cultural bias on intelligence testing, and also know how heredity and environment exert influence on the development of intelligence. Humans require the use of intelligence in every aspect of their daily lives, from practical to emotional to social and many more such areas. Every individual varies in his or her cognitive abilities in comparison to the other people. So we can say that individuals differ on the basis of intelligence they possess. If it is so, then how these individual differences on intelligence are measured? How is an intelligence test constructed, and what standards do scientists require to consider an intelligence test good? How does cultural bias influence the individual differences in intelligence? Moreover, what do various studies reveal about the role of heredity and environment in the development of intelligence? In this module, we would find answers to all such questions. In this discussion, we will focus on various researches made in the field of intelligence, which would help us better understand the concept of its measurement and heredity and environment role in its development. Research have been made, theories have been developed since past 100 years, and still the most agreeable definition for intelligence remains undiscovered. But to give a brief description about what intelligence is, we would dwell on the following definition of intelligence. Intelligence is an individual's ability to learn from his or her experiences, attain knowledge from those experiences, and then use that knowledge to deal accordingly with his or her environment. Think of a situation in which you have to choose between a bicycle and a car by which you would be traveling to a place 2 kilometers away. Now the choice of the mode of transport you would make requires the use of practical intelligence. Consider another situation in which you see a stranger crying on the roadside. Here your emotional intelligence works up to make you empathize with that stranger. Think of one more situation in the examination hall, where you get a question which seems unfamiliar with your preparation. You might try all the methods you know to solve that question and might end up with a solution. Thus, we require intelligence on a daily basis to make choices, solve problems, and establish bonds with others and much more. Intelligence is therefore a very crucial part of individual's cognition, which has been understood as not as a single ability but a global capacity of distinct individual abilities. However, every individual perceives same situations differently and may use their intelligence in different ways to cope with daily life problems. This gives rise to a question: how can we measure these differences in individual abilities? The next section will shed some light on the same question and thus will help us understand how intelligence is measured. Let us consider the above mentioned situations and see how individuals use their intelligence to get across each of them. One person might choose a car and the other might choose the bicycle to travel a distance of 2 kilometers. Also, one individual might reach to the weeping person and empathize with him or her, and the other individual might not reach up and just go away. Similarly, one might be able to solve the unfamiliar question in the question paper and others might not be able to. So, can we say that those who are able to find a solution are more intelligent than others? Or those who opt for a bicycle and those who empathize with the weeping person are more intelligent than those who opt for car or do not empathize with the weeping person? Measurement of intelligence would be a better option to answer such questions. One way to understand this complex phenomena of intelligence is to assess it with the help of intelligence testing. Intelligence testing refers to the estimation of person's intellectual ability through their performance on various tasks or test papers designed to assess the mental competencies. Thus, intelligence test is a series of tasks designed to measure a person's ability to think rationally, act purposefully, and deal effectively with different situations. The score derived on the assessment of an intelligence test is known as intelligence quotient (IQ), which is a term coined by psychologist William Stern in the early years of 1900s. The first intelligence test was invented by French psychologist Alfred Binet in the early years of 20th century, with an aim to discover the children with special needs in learning abilities and help them cope with the school curriculum. In 1905, Binet and his colleague Simon upgraded Binet's intelligence test and named it Binet-Simon test. This revised version was computed while taking into consideration every student's chronological age, because children's mental competencies advance as their age increases over time. In 1916, Stanford University psychologist Lewis Terman revised the Binet-Simon test and produced the Stanford-Binet intelligence scale, which became most popular in US for a number of years. This test defined intelligence in terms of 4 distinct cognitive abilities. First, verbal reasoning, that is the ability to solve verbal problems. Second, quantitative reasoning, that is the ability to solve arithmetical problems. Third, abstract or visual reasoning, that was the ability to solve problems which include geometric shapes with complex relationships. Lastly, short-term memory, the ability to preserve sensory information in the working memory for a short period of time. 2 decades later, psychologist David Wechsler developed a test which proved to be a strong competitor to the Stanford-Binet test. Wechsler believed that intelligence should be measured as group of distinct but related intellectual verbal and non-verbal abilities, which Stanford-Binet did not emphasize on. Therefore, he developed distinct tests for adults and children which measure both verbal and non-verbal abilities. Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale was developed in 1939, followed by development of Wechsler's Intelligence Scale for Children in 1955, and later the development of Wechsler's Preschool Primary Scale of Intelligence in 1967. Since then, these scales have been most widely individually administered intelligence tests in US. Let us understand intelligence quotient. Intelligence quotient was a term coined by psychologist William Stern to define the score derived from the assessment of the intelligence tests. Lewis Terman used the concept to develop Stanford-Binet test. Stern's formula of IQ was to divide the mental age by the chronological age. Chronological age is the number of years passed since birth, and multiply the result by 100 to get rid of the decimal points. The final result is called intelligence quotient. For example, a person who is 20 years old takes the test score a mental age of 15 years. That is, he is able to answer questions which are up to the level of a 15-year-old. So, his IQ quotient will be 15 divided by 2 multiplied by 100, that is 75. The intelligence quotient allows us to compare the intelligence levels of people of different ages. Now, the next question that is very obvious is, how are intelligence tests created? Intelligence tests are widely used in the Western societies to make important decisions such as those related to education, occupation and clinical decisions. Such tests have become an important tool for cognitive psychologists who seek to measure the cognitive development, stability and change over a period of time. To design an intelligence test, the first and the foremost need is to decide which specific behaviors serve as indicators of mental competencies we desire to assess. Next, arises a need to decide the items that would allow us to assess those behaviors. Last but not the least is the need to collect evidence regarding the validity of the test, that is, our sample of items are actually measuring the mental competencies which our test aims to measure. Now the question arises of how to meet these requirements, the answer to which lies in the concept of measurement. The concepts of measurement such as reliability, validity and standardization are very important to be understood. Let's take a hypothetical example to understand this concept of test construction. For example, a professor believes that an elementary class students, that is 10 to 16 years of age, intelligence is determined by his or her vocabulary or verbal ability. Now, in order to test his hypothesis, the professor Martin must construct an intelligence test measuring the verbal ability of elementary class students. As he has already decided the specific behaviors which serve as an indicator of mental competencies, his next requirement would be to devise the items to assess the verbal ability. His last requirement would be to collect the evidence ensuring the validity of the test, for which the sample items of his test must measure the verbal ability of the students. Let us understand how he meets these requirements. Reliability refers to the consistency of the test results. A test is considered to have high reliability if it produces similar results under consistent conditions. In other words, a test is considered to be reliable if it reveals similar results each time it is taken by the same person or a group of persons under similar conditions. Thus, in case of Professor Martin's test, his test would be reliable if it produces the same result regarding their verbal abilities each time he gives it to the same person or group of persons under study. Let us look at the types of reliability and their meanings. Test-retest reliability is assessed by correcting the scores obtained on the same test by the same group of people on two separate occasions over time. A test is given to a group of people, and after some hours or days the test is again given to the same group of people, and the two set of scores so obtained are correlated. Higher correlation among the sets indicate higher reliability. Internal reliability is assessed by measuring the correlation among the items of the test. It simply refers to the consistency of measurement within the test itself. Higher correlation indicates higher reliability. Inter-judge reliability is assessed by correlating the judgment of two different scorers for the same test. It simply refers to the consistency of judgment when two different scorers score the same test or event. Higher correlation here also indicates higher reliability. Validity refers to the extent to which a test measures what it is aimed to measure. A test is considered to be valid if it appropriately measures the mental competencies it is designed to measure. Thus, in case of Professor Martin's test, his test would be valid if it actually measures the verbal ability of the students for which it is designed. There are three types of methods used to measure reliability. The first one is called construct validity, which measures the extent to which the test successfully measures the psychological construct, verbal ability in case of Martin's example. It is designed to measure. A correlation is measured between the test scores and behaviors other than the one being measured. Lower the correlation, higher is the validity of the test. Content validity measures the extent to which the items of the test, that is, items measuring the verbal ability of the students in Martin's example, successfully measure the construct it is designed to measure. In Martin's example, the content validity would measure the extent to which the items of his test measure the verbal abilities of elementary class students. Criterion related validity measures the extent to which the scores on the test successfully predict some present or future behavior, which is assumed to be affected by psychological construct being measured by the test. In Marty's example, the criterion related validity would measure the extent to which the test scores of the students successfully predict their future behavior, which is assumed to be affected by their verbal abilities which the test is designed to measure. It is important to note here that if a test is reliable, it might or might not be valid, but if a test is valid, it will be reliable. Let's move on to standardization. Standardization refers to a two-fold process, which means it has two aspects. First, development of norms and standards, and second, consistent methods of test administration. The first aspect of standardization is norms, which refers to the test scores derived from a large sample of the target population for which the test is designed. These norms help in providing a means to the so obtained IQ score by the test taker. The second aspect of standardization is the consistent method of test administration, which refers to the method which is used to administer the test on a person or a group of people and which retains some despite of whosoever is the examiner or test giver. The norms which are collected from a sample population form a normal curve or distribution in which the scores are most frequent around the mean and become less frequent as we move away from the mean. The figure shows an IQ score of 100 cuts the distribution into two halves, where equal percentage of population score above and below this mean score. The extreme points of the distribution indicate the higher and lower scores obtained by fewer people. If we look at the deviations of IQ, since the formula of IQ had a few drawbacks such as comparison across same age group was not possible with the IQ scores, so Wechsler developed the concept of deviation IQ, which explains the person's intellectual ability in comparison to his or her age group represented by the deviations of his standard score from the mean. Wechsler's IQ tests have a mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 15. Thus, his intelligence scales now use the method of deviation IQ to evaluate the result of test takers. The Flynn effect. A remarkable discovery by New Zealand researcher James Flynn revealed that most of the world's population is progressively scoring higher on the intelligence tests. As a result of the Flynn effect, the IQ scores have had an increase of 28 points in the US since the year 1910, and the same level of increase has been observed in Britain since 1942. The influential factors lying behind such a rise are expected to be availability of better nutrition for both males and females, which has led to an increase in brain functioning. Other plausible explanations are today's richer and complex learning environment, which has given rise to a need of complex coping abilities, and technological advances in today's era, which has helped in the development of abstract and more logical thinking individuals. Let us look at the impact of cultural bias on intelligence testing. Intelligence is a universal phenomena studied and researched upon by various researchers. However, a great deal of challenges are faced by psychologists and researchers who aspire to study the concept of intelligence in people across the world. People come from different cultures and socio-economic backgrounds, holding entirely different beliefs and customs in comparison to others. IQ tests taken by people who are culturally very different from the person who has constructed the tests are not likely to perform well on such tests. Some people might not be aware of the language in which the test has been developed, and those people might end up with poor scores on the test. Some people are even deprived of literacy and are still underprivileged in many corners of the world. Such a large cultural diversity existing among humans all over makes it difficult for the researchers to develop intelligence tests which is free of cultural bias. That is, it can be taken up by any person irrespective of their culture. The concept of intelligence holds different meanings to different cultures. For example, for a highly complex and advanced culture, such as urban culture, being intelligent for a teenager might mean having knowledge about how to operate a computer, whereas for a simple and primitive culture, such as a rural culture, being intelligent for a teenager might mean having knowledge about how to work at farms. Thus, scores on intelligence tests assessing the knowledge about computer skills might be higher for urban kids and absolutely nil for rural kids. But this doesn't imply that urban children are more intelligent than rural children. Thus, this major drawback of cultural bias makes it difficult to compare people from different cultures on the basis of their intelligence. Hence, to meet the challenges imposed by cross-cultural intelligence assessment, psychologists have developed non-verbal tests so as to assess the non-verbal intellectual abilities such as problem solving, evaluate abstract patterns, etc. It helps reflect the non-verbal intellectual ability of the test taker and is not influenced by culture. A most popular non-verbal test used to assess the educative ability is the Raven's progressive matrices. Another major approach taken to minimize the cultural bias is to develop intelligence tests which contain items which uses the cultural specific knowledge and skills of the test taker to solve them. This helps reflect the intelligence and coping and adaptive ability of the test taker with respect to his or her culture. Scores so obtained on such tests predict the success of functioning of the test taker of that culture. Let us now move on to the role of heredity and environment. Having learnt about how intelligence is measured and the invention and construction of intelligence testing, let's try to find out whether intelligence is mostly affected by nature or nurture. Nature or heredity or genes and nurture, which means environment, both influence intelligence, working in a relationship dependent on each other. Nature influences on how nurture affects the intelligence of an individual. Similarly, nurture influences on how nature affects the intelligence of an individual. Let's understand this with the help of an example. For instance, prenatal factors such as alcohol consumption by the mother, effect of gene-directed behavior of the newborn baby. In this way, environment influences the effect of heredity on the intelligence of the baby. Consider another example. The gene-directed behavior of a person influences what kind of a person he chooses to be his friend, further influencing the effect of that chosen company of friends on his intelligence. In this way, heredity affects the effect of environment on the intelligence of a person. Nature and nurture form a vicious circle, constantly depending upon each other and influencing the individual differences in intelligence. Genetic factors clearly have a strong influence on individuals' intelligence. More than 200 of the group variations in intelligence is due to genetic factors as reported by research done by Plowman. Also, the research suggests that the more the genes people have in common, the more similar IQ they tend to have. Twin studies made by various researchers suggest that identical twins or monozygotic twins are found to have a slightly higher similarity in IQ than do fraternal twins or dizygotic twins. A plausible explanation behind the same is the availability of more genes in common in identical twins due to formation of a single zygote and comparatively lesser genes in common in fraternal twins due to formation of two different zygotes. Genetic factors become more important as we age. Reason being, genetic factors more strongly affect intelligence as more advanced cognitive processes emerge during development. Also, people select and create environment that they find appropriate according to their genetic factors. Thus, genes play important role as we develop. Environment, on the other hand, accounts for 30 to 50% of individual differences in IQ. Environment can be divided into two parts on the basis of twin studies and research made. Both shared as well as non-shared environment exert influence on intelligence. Shared environment refers to the family environment which both twins, identical or fraternal, share, whereas non-shared environment refers to the different family environment in which both twins, identical or fraternal, respectively live. Thus, research studies have suggested that shared environment have a slightly higher influence on the IQ of twins as compared to the non-shared environment. Hence, family and environment play a role in the development of intelligence. Identical twins raised in same environment are likely to have higher similarity in IQ than those raised in non-shared environment. Similarly, fraternal twins raised in the same environment are also likely to have slightly higher similarity in IQ as compared to those raised in the non-shared environment. Socioeconomic status as well as better education also plays an important role in the development of intelligence. Recall the reasons behind the Flynn effect, which clearly states that the influential role of environment, that is availability of better nutrition, better education facilities, technological advances and complex learning environment increase IQ scores across the globe. So this brings us to the end of this module. Let's quickly summarize a few important points. Intelligence is an individual's ability to learn from his or her experiences, attain knowledge from those experiences, and then use that knowledge to deal accordingly with his or her environment. Intelligence can be assessed with the help of intelligence testing, which refers to the estimation of people's intellectual ability through their performance on various tasks or test papers designed to assess the mental competencies. Intelligence tests can be constructed by meeting the following requirements, which are standardization, reliability and validity. Cultural bias leads to a difficulty of developing an intelligence test that can be administered on all the people across the globe. Nature and nurture form a vicious cycle, constantly affecting each other and together influencing the individual differences in intelligence. Identical twins are found to have slightly higher similarity in IQ than do fraternal twins. Research suggests that shared environment have a slightly higher influence on the intelligence of twins as compared to the non-shared environment.